All right, so like in the previous video, man, I was having a conversation about the difference between a best mentality and better mentality. And the storyline was behind, I've always been talking to people and basically for the longest time I've worked with people and I always heard the term, I will try my best or I am trying my best or I have tried my best or I will do my best. Let's just say do because like we all understand that trying is everything but do, right? And through interacting with people and kind of realize the limitations of the word best because like your best is subjective and it's as everything else stuck in time because at one point that at one point was relevant, the only image of your best is basically whatever you had at one point wherever you're going. So by the end of it I started kind of like explaining the beauty of I want to say growth or incrementation. And I feel this would actually like contribute to the book has kind of like that's kind of itching. The idea of what if your best is not good enough? So I started asking this question at one point. Uh, I feel it's around that time in my life where I kind of realized that I'm losing more people that I'm actually like meeting. And I'm not gonna lie, it really is one of those like reversal shifts, but it was the price for something different, so it doesn't matter. Anyways, what I was trying to explain is basically like from a shortish thing. I was trying to explain the way kind of like the world actually like works, and when we say our basically our mind or our mental world expands, we're not really we're not really talking about like if I see basically like I don't know, I'm seeing this much space, I'm seeing this much more, right? We're not our growth is not from a spatial perspective. Much better. All right, much better. Our growth is not really from a spatial perspective, as in we're not looking at one thing and seeing more of it. But when your world expands, it's basically you're looking at the same thing. It's the same. It's the same view every day. It's the same face every day. It's the same house. It's the same road. It's the same tree. But that one thing extra that you learn is basically like gonna apply itself to a whole lot of details around that tree, right? Around that road, around that structure landscape. So my worldview expands. It doesn't really mean I'm actually like looking at more things or the it just means my world includes more things. And again, everything you see just kind of like contributes to details in others. Uh, it's not a horizontal or vertical expansion. It's more of a detailed expansion, clarity expansion, or at the very least, least observation expansion. And the way I was trying to explain it is be like, look, is like, let's just say this is how you see the world right now, right? Whatever this is, like it's a, imagine this is sphere. And what we do is basically we kind of this is our best. This is the absolute limitation. It doesn't matter what you do. You cannot do more than what you already know. You can't do more than what you're already capable of. So at maximum, what you have is you have this sphere, and you're probably kind of like expanding the sphere a bit. Now, yes, that's a very reasonable and logical approach. The problem with that is that from a volumes perspective, the sphere probably, for example, from here to here, from a volumes perspective, Like a 1 inch increase in radius probably like increases the volume of a sphere by a lot, but all you're doing is just basically like like seeing more of what you already know. Correct? I'm not saying that's wrong, but it kind of seems like it's a jack of all trades approach, right? Like you're literally you're pushing yourself is more of a balloonish approach instead of a redesign. Bear with me. I think I'm onto something. So my thought process becomes like, okay, what is your best? I don't know. Like I'm doing this. Okay, what does this need? Okay, instead of doing your best, I just want to do better. So like, I'm horrible at this. If I'm doing my best, I'm kind of like exerting myself today, and I exert myself tomorrow, and I exert myself after tomorrow. But what if that's just kind of like you blowing, like going to school and studying for like 3, 4 days in a row before your finals when you have tests, and then the next day forgetting everything. Like you kind of like that, right? Because what you're doing is you're kind of like expanding everything, and then by the time it's done, you kind of like, let's just say you expand by like, I don't know, 20 centimeters or a foot or something like that. And then by the time you're done, it shrinks back. Like you did gain an extra like 1 or 2 inches maybe, but like you expanded a lot more than that, and that basically kind of like fucks with your capacity. Or at the very least, it kind of like, when you kind of like, you're skinny, you get thicker, and then you kind of like lose weight. As you lose basically like your weight, you kind of like feel that your skin after like gaining weight kind of like stretches or something like this. It's kind of the same thing. So the idea behind that is kind of like I don't know. It doesn't seem natural, or at the very least, it doesn't seem sustainable. And so the way I was describing it is you kind of like you're living in whatever your bubble is, and it's fascinating because it doesn't matter the shape you had at one point. Uh, like a drop of water, if you put it on its own, because of the surface tension, what happens? It kind of like brings everything in. And I feel like the brain does the same thing with our worldview or with our own view within this world, because what it does is that the way we see the world is our limitations. By the way, it's like the way we describe the world is our limitations. So effectively, what happens is, like let's say at one point we were kind of like exploring something, so it's a tangent. But the minute we stop exploring it, like our existence either consumes it or expands to it. So the default state is going back to a sphere. And the goal is never to have that sphere to always be like going somewhere, but never expanding the whole thing, because the rest of the sphere kind of has to adjust and re-engage with like the new details and the new data points. Because like if you're growing if you're growing where you are, as you are directly, imagine a drop of water again. If you're just growing as you are, then ultimately you're gonna kind of like lose surface tension. I feel like that's where you break. That's where anxiety hits. That's where you kind of like you break. I don't know. That's where the water bubble pops. It just can't hold tension anymore, so it just splits into smaller like bubbles or smaller like drops. But what if you kind of like put your finger on the water bubble and kind of like extend it, enough, until it kind of like as you extend it, you're kind of like reaching smaller bubbles around. Because when you're figuring something out, when you're learning something out, when you're doing better every day, what effectively you're doing is you're kind of like engaging with new parts of the world, new water drops, and kind of like building with them directly. Specifically, in order for what? In order for you to kind of like explore what they have, the parts, because they exist somewhere, right? So like you're exploring now the world from the angle of that existing in your life. It's like an extra like lens taken away, or an extra kind of like zooming power given to you, right? And please remember, observing is not seeing. Observing is seeing, hearing, feeling, touching, analyzing. All of this is observing. So what ends up happening is kind of like you take a the same dot of water that's there, and all the smaller, basically, like I want to say the humidity or the humid dots of the humid effects of waters all around the area. And then you kind of like extend every day. You kind of like extend a bit, so this tension on the dot is still there and it's relevant, and it's kind of like building a bit more momentum because every single time you kind of like reach a new kind of like small dot or like you're learning that extra bit, learning every day. Every time you do that, you kind of like you're strengthening the entire like water drop without actually like forcing it to change or forcing anything, imposing anything on it. So by the time you kind of like come to a certain realization regarding your stuff, regarding the, and I mentioned it because like, okay, so we moved in one direction. So the water drop right now is kind of like extending in one side. And what happens is the minute you kind of like remove your finger, that for me is you kind of like looking back and kind of like seeing the difference between how you started the month and how you ended the month. For example, I'm using a month as an example. Once you see that difference, what ends up happening is a stretch, basically, the stretch of the water drop. The minute you remove it, it kind of comes back and suddenly it's a bigger bubble. And so what you would have done is you would have kind of like included more things in your own perception and adjusted your perspective, whether you like it or not. Your perspective would have adjusted based on the new information and the new skills and new experience that you had. So your best automatically changes only because you're doing a bit better every single day. And if you're just trying to do your best, then ultimately, then probably you're doing the exact same thing with a bit more, I guess, bedazzlement. Because every single time, I don't know, having the same picture in different colors is different than having the same picture in different styles. And every day doing better allows your best to be like a side effect, getting better. There's no your best. There's whatever I did yesterday, I'm doing better now. While doing your best is kind of like a limitation because ultimately, whatever was your best is going to be your best and probably will always be your best. Huh, look at that. 2 videos in this morning. I love you guys.